Visitors, thank you. And I'm going to start, as we've got some people here who may not know, with the evacuation procedure. So the usual thing, we've got 2 exits, if there's an emergency, and sound the alarm. If you can, if it's a fire and you can do something about it, do, otherwise get out as quickly as you can. And please wait in the car park at the back until the cat, I think, who will see whether everybody's out before she dismisses you. So please don't just disappear whilst we search in the building for you. So thank you very much. Have I got? I've got some apologies. So I've got Councillor Fowler, substitute Councillor Clues, Councillor Jens, substitute Councillor Simmons, and I've just heard that Hayden can't join us because of a car incident. So
it's a car issue. He hasn't had an accident.
Oh, right. Okay, brilliant. That's great. Thank you. Any disposable, pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests? No? Thank you. Now, when we come to the minutes, we've got a bit of an issue. Also, public participation first. Have we got any public participation? No, thank you very much. The minutes that you've got in your papers are not the minutes that you should be looking at. Just in case anybody wasn't aware, you've got the minutes of the November meeting, August meeting, sorry, and it should be the 14th of October meeting. So that's been put on your table. If anybody needs any time to read those minutes, please say so. Yes, I've just glance over those. So those are the minutes we'll be approving, not the ones in your pack. Okay, can I have a proposer to accept those minutes? Thank you, Councillor Amelia, and seconded by Councillor Singh. Thank you. All those in favour? Very much. Lovely. So we go on to the main business of the meeting then. It's a bit difficult today to manage this effectively because we've got one topic split between the white papers and the gold papers, as you will have seen. Obviously we're going to deal with the white papers. It's really important that the decisions on the white papers are done in public because people need to see them and to see what's going on. So it's quite right that they should be there. But if you ask questions under the white papers that we can't answer, wait till we get to the gold papers. So if it gets too difficult, we'll just go straight into private and confidential. But I would like as much of the discussion as we can, if there is going to be a discussion, to be under the public arena. Okay, so if you ask questions and we can't answer them, we'll just say, sorry, we've got to keep that until later. Okay, is everybody okay with that? So for those of you that came to the pre-meeting last week, you will know a lot of this, but it's all set out there. And so I don't know, Kath, do you want to do an introduction?
I'm happy to introduce the paper, Chair.
Thank you.
So members will be aware that following the August meeting, we went away to undertake some feasibility work, both on the sites in Polesworth and in Atterston. And the paper this evening, both parts of the paper are really the findings that in terms of the work that we've been doing. Members will recall that we set a number of principles as we've been working through this, which is whatever we do has to be best value to the North Warwickshire taxpayer. Also to point out at this stage that we won't know true cost certainty until next summer, but every time we go through each individual stage of the project, we hopefully get a bit nearer to understanding that. Inflation, we found as part of the feasibility stages is quite important. There's a lot more detail on that in the closed papers, but it is quite substantial that construction costs at the moment are ever increasing. So, you know, the speed of making a decision will impact upon some of these things. And also the figures that you can see are for a mature service to mature service. It doesn't include the fact that we might have to stop providing some services for a while or adding in different things or what have you. It literally is just a high level estimate of where we would be in a couple of years' time. Another principle that we've talked about previously is about clarity. The market tends not to like risk. If we can be as clear as we can to the market, to to the operators and to the construction marketplace, then the odds of them building in lots more risk than they need to, we can diminish that. So anything we put forward, we want to be mindful of that. I think it probably goes without saying that the project has to be affordable. We've always said that affordability is a key criteria in anything that we take forward. And members will have seen the first iteration of the medium-term financial strategy, which went to the executive board on Monday evening. So a number of the issues and the decisions this evening will be cast in light of that medium-term financial strategy. So we've been doing quite a bit of work. We looked at the standard operating model that was put together by the council in 2018, which basically sets out the need, what leisure need, what leisure provision do we require. And we've been working with Max Associates to try and identify future demand. So if we built a new centre, we added on additional provision, what might that look like? And then we also did some initial high-level work in terms of if we had to build a building to accommodate that demand and need, what are our options and what are the likely costs of that, which again are contained in the gold papers. Following the meeting in August as well, members agreed to initiate a procurement process or potentially explore a procurement process for a leisure operator, and we've started work on that. We've been doing quite a bit of work, and just to say that we will be wanting to work with the sounding board that you agreed in the August meeting through December to have a look in far more detail at that contract and the provision going forward. So all of that then will be brought back to this board in January for members to have a full discussion around all of those, but it would be really helpful to get that input as we're preparing that documentation. The other major piece of work that we're looking at the moment is also testing the market with regard to a design and build or developer partner. We've had an external report which has basically set out all the different ways that we could procure professional services for the project. We're now closing in on that market testing exercise with regard to that. And hopefully, when we come back in January, we'll be able to advise members that we've been successful in doing that. The paper sets out that the two core options are a design and build two-stage process or a developer partner route. And we've got two members of the market coming in next week, and we've also talked to a number of other operators to be able to ensure ourselves that we would get a good partner to work with. We've also been speaking to other local authorities who themselves have gone through this process recently, and we've taken references from a number of sites. So again, whilst architects, people who operate in this market will always tell you they've done this work, it's always good to understand how other people who've worked with them have actually found that process, and things were delivered on time and to budget and went very well. So hopefully some due diligence around those areas will be helpful as well. In terms of the leisure operator contract, nothing has changed from your decisions in August. We would be looking to go out for a 10+5, and as I said, we'll bring the detail of that back to members in the coming months. Section 7 of the report talks around Atherstone Leisure Complex. We've had a look at some very high-level designs based on the demand and the SOPM model that we commissioned in 2018, and these are set out in Section 7 of the report. And then Section 8 also talks around the feasibility regarding the Abbey Green site at Colesworth. Again, the detail of that is set out in the gold papers. Just to mention on the Abbey Green site, in the August meeting, we said we would start to do some initial site surveys just to make sure that the site was suitable for any future potential development. Certainly the surveys we've undertaken thus far haven't found anything that would in the future avoid us from using that site. Detailed surveys on any of the sites in Atherstone or Polesworth would be undertaken before we start anything, but initial surveys have been positive for both. We talked about affordability. Section 9 really is just highlighting that. Certainly, inflation is a really big factor, and the more expensive the build, the higher the inflation cost. So what we're saying as one of the recommendations, which we'll probably come to later, is that delaying the build in Atherstone may very well cost the council a lot more in the long run than approaching the sites in the way that we suggested in August. We're also probably very conscious of the fact that Atherstone Leisure Centre is, it's a very old facility. It's going down on a more regular basis now, even though we are trying to maintain it and keep it going as best as we can. I've mentioned the NTFS strategy, and highlighted in italics on the bullet point there is basically what we set out in August, which is a key requirement of the investment strategy for new facilities, is to be able to create the efficiencies that will then pay for the future investment. Also attached in the gold papers is the 106 agreement, for members to be aware of what's in that. And we've also redrafted the timetable in section 10 for members to look at this evening. And section 11 is really the council's options. Leisure is a discretionary service. Council doesn't have to undertake any leisure. I'm not suggesting for a minute that you do that, but it is an option that we have to start with. And those options, core options, are set out for members. There are also a number of risks highlighted in the report. This is a very big project. It's a construction project. It's going to involve a lot of risks and cost to the council. So we would want to make sure that those risks are well documented to members as we proceed through the project stages. I'm happy to leave it there, Chair, but I'm more than happy to take any questions.
I'm sure, yeah. Thank you very much. It's a good summary. Right, questions and comments, anybody? Oh, thanks. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
I'll be more formal, Councillor Cox.
Obviously, I'm not a member of the board, but I would like to speak. It's okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously, my concern is, as a Polesworth councillor, that the Polesworth and Dawn Leisure Centre gets moved to be an aspiration. Now there is money that is set aside for Polesworth and Dawn Leisure Centre, I mean, one of my concerns is that money, is that going to be used simply to bring forward the Atherstone project, as it were? It may be, but what is going to be done about Polesworth and Dawn? I understand that the Atherstone Leisure Centre is very, in need of refurbishment or replacement. It is old, it's creaking. We do have a sports centre in Polesworth. It's inappropriately sited because it's within the school grounds. So for daytime use in this current day and age, school sites have to be more secure than that, therefore it can't be used in the day. It's only available in the evenings. It's now a very old and tired facility, in the same way that Atherstone is. So what we've got is a community in Polesworth and Dawn, which is already, I think, the largest combined community in North Warwickshire, and is going to become much larger. Over 600 houses have been built in Polesworth in the last 4 to 5 years. Another 800 for Polesworth. The combined total for Polesworth and Dawn is 2,200. There are 1,250 houses going up the hill, which are to an extent dependent on facilities in Tamworth, but there is going to be a draw down into Polesworth, and there is, what we are seeing here is a very, very significant development, the largest in North Warwickshire, I believe, and facilities that have become aspirational. Now, I understand we've got to get the best value for money. But when we looked at the local plan, nobody was talking about aspirational infrastructure plans. Nobody was talking about aspirational facilities. They were talking about an infrastructure plan that will provide the facilities. That, you know, is no longer there. And I feel that I have to say that the people of Polesworth and Dordon are being sadly let down by this council. I understand the pressure of finance, but to be classed as receiving facilities that are simply aspirational, I think many will feel that we're just waving goodbye, and there we go. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Yeah. So, okay, I'll let you come in, Anna, and then I'll respond. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I was hoping you would respond because I have got a comment that I'd like a response from directly, Councillor Bell, if that's okay. As you're all aware, I'm vehemently opposing this as a councillor in Polesworth myself. You know, we know that this was promised in 2020's budget and has been talked about in length since. Councillor Parsons mentioned the local plan. I will also mention, because it has to be said and it is in the public domain, that the other side of the chamber ran campaigns on this. We've got all of the evidence from that from the previous elections. It's just not on. I mean, the public deserve better. You know, you can't make up these things and these facts just to win campaigns or try and win campaigns. You know, I'm sorry, but this is not on and the public deserve better. Councillor Bell, just to quote you, I know it seems that we have been start, stop on this, but there is momentum now, she said, from BBC News. Can I ask you to make comment on that, please?
I'm not aware of the BBC News comment, but I'll take your word for it. Yes, sorry.
Verbatim it was.
Thank you. We are not saying we are not going to do Polesworth. Everybody knows that infrastructure follows development. It may not be ideal, it isn't ideal, it's not the way we would any of us like to do it. But we have to have the houses coming forward before we get the 106 in order to do the infrastructure. That's how it works. And we've got some houses come forward, but not the major number of them. When they come forward, then it's still on there. In fact, one of the recommendations is that we continue with the detailed business case for this. We are continuing looking at Polesworth and seeing what we can do. One of the things I was going to suggest, just to show we are not abandoning Polesworth. There is 1.4, I think that's about right, 1.4 million in the coffers for Polesworth from 106 already. If it's something that particularly the Polesworth councillors, but the council generally, wants to look at, I can ask the officers to look at the business case for doing the 3G pitch with that money as soon as possible. Because we've got the money there, so we can do something. But we may be able to do something, but we've got to look at the business case, because obviously it would need to be run, it will have a revenue cost, and it will have a revenue income, so it needs a business case. But if that's something that you would like the officers to look at, we can ask the officers to look into that, bring it back to, I think the next meeting's in January, is it, Kath? To the January meeting. So we can do that, and to show that we are not abandoning Polesworth. We will do what we can when we can. So we can use that 1.4 million. If the business case stacks up, we can use that as soon as possible. So if that's something that everybody wants, I'll add it to the recommendations at the bottom. So when we come to look at the recommendations, I'll add that there. Okay. Yeah, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Just switch this on. Bear me a second. Yeah, obviously I'm a ward councillor with Emma in Polesworth West. We've been talking about the sports centre for quite some time now, since I was at first a councillor in 2019. It's a shame that it seems to have come to an either or. And Polesworth appears, I know there's different ways of putting this, but it appears to be being kicked into the long grass, literally. If you look at the bowling green that is approaching 12 feet high now in Polesworth, well, it's a blight and an eyesore, to be honest. It's slightly embarrassing walking around there having to look at that. It was once a proud bowling green, and now I'd get lost in there. It's that high. The sports centre is something that I think transcends the politics a little bit, because it's a sort of a handshake for the residents for taking on the houses and the building and development. No community likes to see things change, but some things do change. So the houses and development, they were put in. I was one of the voices against it, but part of that sort of bargain that you take with the residents is that the promised infrastructure actually gets delivered. That's the promise that you have with the electorate. I don't feel that is happening for my ward in Polesworth, and indeed in Dordon as well. Dordon is the next community along. You know, it's obvious that they would make good use of that as well. It's a shame that we can't come to a better options appraisal. I'd like to see different options appraisal put forward, rather than just this is what we've come up with and that's just that one option. I'm sure that we probably could do that. See if we can try and somehow use the money that was set aside in the budget. I remember that £3 million that was put aside in the budget, add that to the figures and sums that we've already got, and see where we end up with that. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Sorry, I don't know anything about the bowling green. If it's something you want us to come back on, yeah, I don't know. Have any of the officers, are you familiar with the bowling green on Abbey Green Park? No. Okay, we'll come back on that because it's not something I was aware of. Is it something we own? Presumably it is. Okay, all right. We'll look into that and see what's happening there. So we'll come back on that. Thank you. Caroline, Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Councillor. I think it is really difficult, and it is a really difficult one, and to manage cash flow when you've got some really sizable projects. It was always the intention, as has been set out in the budget, to look at the Polesworth and to do the Polesworth Centre. But I think one of the things that would be really remiss of us as a council is to ignore the reports that the officers spend a long, long time pulling together. And actually the management of that cash flow and the on-cost for the residents, I think doesn't enable us to demonstrate good value for their money if we spend more than we need to on delivering the same items over a period of time. And I know that's a really bitter pill to swallow, because it is for us too, because you are right, because we have said we want to do something in Polesworth. We have said that, and we do. And one of the things that's really difficult about this is flipping that round and saying, actually, if we do things in the order within which we originally planned, it'll cost this council X sums more, and therefore the residents of this borough X sums more to do both things. And we also have a duty of care to that value of money, and managing that cash flow for this council too. So whilst I agree it's difficult, I do think that we actually have to take heed of the reports that get written for us and the work that is done to make sure we make the right decisions, and actually not being too proud or too stubborn to look at it and say, do you know what, that might not have been the right way round, unfortunately. And there are always some winners and losers in that, but hopefully over the period of time there can be something in the places that we want, and that's what we talked about. There's that Section 106 money that could be used in the interim, and I think that's a good plan.
Thanks, Caroline. Councillor Hobley.
Thank you, Chair. I've been looking at
the situation from a slightly different view as a resident and councillor of Hartshill. The children at my local school use Addiston. It's our only swimming provision in North Warwickshire. If my children were to have to go anywhere else, there'd be a swimming pool that I didn't choose to send my child to because of I didn't like it, or Tamworth, and I'm not going to travel down the A5 at rush hour to get to a 6 o'clock swimming lesson. As a mum, my children both swim at Addiston as well. I can understand, as a councillor, as an elected councillor, I have to vote for Addiston because this is what my residents are going to use and going to appreciate. However, there's the point where Emma, Mike, Dave, Byron, Davina, the Polesworth councillors have been promised something for their residents. They've got to do what's right by their residents. And if that's having a review, having, you know, me in a football pitch, if there's other things in place, I can understand. We know the financial implications. If this was done years ago when it was supposed to happen, the financial implications were completely different. I was sat with Councillor Taylor, back with Russell and Simon, sorry, I forgot his name, and understood more, broke down the cost implications of what this was going to cost compared to what it's going to cost now. And the problem is with this, with these costs going up, the cost of Polesworth now, whilst if we prioritise Addiston, the cost for Polesworth is going to go up and up and up. Is this ever going to be a feasible thing? Because the residents need to know that. So whilst I really appreciate all the time, the effort, the expertise that has gone into this, but the residents of Polesworth and Dordon deserve to know if this is going to happen. It can't just be a sort of empty promise that just never happens anymore. That's just my 5 pence worth. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I will repeat, we are not abandoning Polesworth, but it was always done, as you pointed out, through the local plan, because of the developments in the area. That's why we even started talking about this facility, and it was always there because the 106 would come through. And not only that, but when we did the modelling for a leisure centre in Polesworth, we needed those new residents to make it viable. So it is dependent on those sites coming forward. Now, there has been some movement, but not movement on the biggest sites. I'm sure there will be, but not yet. So that's what we're relying on. We're relying on 106, but we're also relying on the people being there to use the leisure centre. So it's not gone away, but it was always linked to the development. As you said, it was linked to the development in the local plan, and it still is. It still is. So that's where we are with it. As I say, I'll add another recommendation onto the recommendations to get the business case to see if we want to use that 1.4 million, I think it is, that's already in the coffers. So we'll come to that in a minute. Are there any more comments or questions? Yeah. Councillor Reary.
For me, I obviously represent the villagers near Polesworth. My residents use Polesworth, they use Addiston as well as other pools, etc. I think it's really difficult to vote on this actually without knowing what the provision will be for Polesworth. I think the promises have been made for so long. I don't think it cuts mustard to say, well, we'll do what we can, we'll have a look at it. I think that business case should have been brought here tonight. I think there should have been a proper options paper of if we prioritise it, so this is what we're doing for Polesworth, because otherwise it does look like you could throwing it in, kicking it into the grass. Because that has happened so many times. I mean, I'm, a relatively new councillor, but residents talk to me about how long this has been happening. So I'm really disappointed actually to come tonight and to have read the papers and to see that there isn't a full options paper, which includes what could be done for Polesworth, rather than just a promise for a future business case. And I would actually like to see them coming back to the next meeting with more options. I think, to be honest, I think we've waited so long, I don't actually think waiting another month at this point, I think makes any difference. And I also think, you know, you went into the election last year making promises. Now, I don't work in construction, but even I knew that costs were going up. So I don't think you could have made promises last year wholeheartedly thinking that you could still deliver this, because it's obvious that costs were going up. So I think you've made promises to try and win seats, and then you've turned up now saying, no, well, we can't do that anymore because you didn't win seats in Polesworth. And that is honestly my view.
Okay, thank you. Any more? In which case we'll go into the recommendations that are on the white papers, and then we can go into P&C there and see if there's any questions on some of the detail that's not public. Okay, so if you look at page 7, I think it is, got 2 page numbers here, I think it's 7. You can see the recommendations. So the first 2 are to note. Note the progress to procure a new leisure operator for the borough. That's for all leisure centres. Note the progress to proceed with the design and build developer. Pages there. They come, that's the continuation from what we agreed at the last meeting. Proceed with the design, planning and procurement of a new leisure facility in Atherstone. And the last one on the papers, to agree to continue to develop a detailed business case to meet the council's aspiration provision of a new leisure facility in Polesworth. And I'm going to add a 5th one here, to ask the officers to produce a business case, for the use of the 106 money we have at the moment for Polesworth, for presumably for a 3G pitch, or indeed for anything else that might be useful, and bring that back to the next meeting. Okay. So those are the recommendations. I've got a proposer, please. Councillor Simmons, seconded by. I'll second it from the chair. Oh, sorry, Councillor Jarvis. Those in favour, please. Q against. 2. Any abstentions? Right, that's carried. Thank you very much. So, okay. So we now have to agree or not to go into private sector. I have to read this out, so it's tedious. To consider in accordance with section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972 whether it is in the public interest that the public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by Schedule 12A. To the act. You can stay, David. Have you to be if you want to stay? Okay. I don't know how you can bear to leave. Thank you. Have we stopped recording? Thank you. So basically, the gold papers